She walked down the street with slow steps as the evening light touched the buildings around her, and the noise of traffic mixed with the calls of sellers from small shops that were still open, and she carried a tired look because her day had been long and confusing, and she only wanted to reach home and rest, but something unusual stopped her as she reached the narrow turn near the old bookstore, because right there on the sidewalk stood a large wooden piano covered in dust and scratches, like it had been left in the rain and sun for many weeks, and the strange sight made her pause as she wondered who would leave something so big and heavy in such a place, and she looked around, but no one seemed to care about it, and people walked past it without even giving it a second look, as if it was nothing more than forgotten trash. But for her, it pulled her attention in a way she could not explain, and she stepped closer to it, trying to understand why it felt familiar in a soft and quiet way that touched her heart. The piano looked old, and its color had faded, and the wood had chipped at many places, and one side looked like it had been pushed roughly against something. But the keys, though slightly yellow, still looked fine, and she slowly raised her hand and brushed the dust from a few of them, and the dust left a mark on her fingers, and she smiled a little, without knowing why, because it reminded her of a time when she used to sit in front of an old piano in a small room and try to learn simple tunes. But life had changed as she had stopped playing, and she had not touched a piano in years, and now this broken, forgotten one stood here, waiting like it wanted someone to give it a chance, and she felt something warm inside her, like an old memory waking up from sleep, and without thinking much, she sat on the wobbly wooden bench placed in front of it. Though she hesitated, wondering if it would even make a sound, she pressed one key, gently expecting to hear nothing, but to her surprise, the key made a soft sound, a little weak and shaky, but still alive, and she pressed another, and then another, and each one produced a small voice, like the piano had been waiting for so long to speak again, and she felt her chest tighten with a mix of joy and sadness, and she closed her eyes for a moment, letting the simple sound flow into her. And when she opened them again, she noticed a few people slowing down to look at her, maybe surprised to see someone sitting at a street piano, but she tried to ignore them because she wanted a moment with the instrument, as she placed both hands lightly on the keys and played a short tune that she remembered from her younger days, a tune her mother once taught her when the world felt safe and easy, and as her fingers moved, the sound filled the street in a way that felt strangely soft and calming, even though the instrument was old and uneven. The busy noise around her began to fade, and she felt like she was sitting in a different place, far from the loud street, and as she continued to play, she felt herself sinking into the moment, forgetting the long day and forgetting the heavy thoughts that often sat on her shoulders, and she played with a small smile that grew slowly, because as the melody formed, she felt alive in a way she had not felt in a long time, and when the final note came, she lifted her fingers, gently letting the sound settle into the air, and she breathed in with a deep, calm feeling that surprised her, because she had not felt peace like this for years. A soft clap came from somewhere near her, and she looked up startled, because she had almost forgotten that the world around her still existed, and a small group of people stood there, watching her with warm faces and gentle smiles, and some of them looked surprised, while others looked moved by the simple tune, and the moment felt strange, but nice, because she had not expected anyone to pay attention, and she looked down shyly. But the applause grew louder, and a few more people stopped to listen, and she felt a rush of emotion that she could not explain, because she never thought a simple tune played on an abandoned piano could bring such a reaction from strangers. She stood up slowly, unsure of what to do next, but a woman from the small crowd came forward and told her that the music made her day better, and a man said he had not heard something so soothing in a long time, and an older person nodded warmly, as if the tune reminded them of something from their past, and she felt a soft warmth spread inside her, because she had never thought she could touch people's hearts in this way, and she tried to thank them, but her voice shook a little from the surprise, and she stepped back from the piano, feeling a little overwhelmed, but also deeply touched, and the people slowly moved on, with their day still smiling as they left, and she stood alone again. But now the street felt different, and so did the piano. She looked at the instrument again, and it seemed less broken than before. Or maybe she was seeing it with different eyes, because she felt a connection with it, something gentle and meaningful, and she touched the top of it softly, as if thanking it for giving her something she did not know she needed, and she wondered who had placed it here, and why, but there was no answer, and that mystery only made the moment feel more magical. And as she turned to leave, she found herself taking a few steps and then stopping, because she looked back once more, feeling like she was leaving behind a friend, even though she knew it was only an object. But somehow it felt alive because of the music it had shared with Hirsch. She continued to walk home, but her steps were lighter, and her heart felt calm, and her mind kept replaying the simple tune she had played, and every time she thought of it she smiled without meaning to, and she remembered how she had once dreamed of becoming very good at playing, and how she used to practice so much until things changed in her life that made her stop, and she had pushed the memory away for so long that she forgot how much she loved it, and today this street piano brought it back to her in a soft, quiet way, and she wondered if she should go back tomorrow to play again, not for anyone else, but for herself, because for the first time in many years, something felt right in her heart, and maybe this piano was a sign that she should reconnect with the part of her she had lost long ago. She reached her home and sat on the edge of her bed, thinking about the moment again, and she felt a strange excitement that made her heart beat a little faster, not in a worried way, but in a hopeful way. And she kept thinking about the faces of the people who had stopped to listen, and how they had smiled at her, and she realized she had not felt appreciated like that in a long time, because life had been heavy and quiet, and her world had felt small, and she was used to feeling unnoticed. But today something changed, and she could feel that change deep inside, like a soft spark lighting up a dark corner of her heart. The thought of returning to the street piano kept circling in her mind, even when she tried to distract herself, because something about the experience called her back in a gentle but powerful way, and she wondered if the piano would still be there the next day, because sometimes the city workers removed items left on the street, but she hoped it would remain, because she wanted to sit on that old bench again and touch those dusty keys and feel the sound travel through her hands and into the world the way it did earlier. And she hoped that maybe some of those people who had listened might walk by again and hear her play something better this time, because she felt like she wanted to improve, like she wanted to rediscover everything she had once loved about music. Later that night, she lay in bed, but sleep did not come quickly, because her mind was busy thinking about how a simple moment could change the feeling of an entire day, and how something as old and forgotten as that piano could give her a sense of peace that she had been missing for so long. And she realized how beautiful life could be when something unexpected appears and reminds a person of who they used to be and who they still could become. And she felt grateful for the quiet magic of the moment, because it gave her a feeling she thought she had lost. The night slowly passed, and when the morning came, she opened her eyes with a feeling of purpose she had not felt in a long time, and she got ready quickly and stepped out with a soft excitement in her heart, because all she wanted was to see the piano again and maybe play something new, something a little stronger and a little deeper. And she hoped that the warm feeling she had yesterday would return, because it had made her believe that maybe life still held some gentle surprises for her. And she walked down the street with a small, hopeful smile. As the day began again the next day, she woke up with the sunlight falling gently through the window, and a strange excitement that made her heart beat faster than usual because she could not wait to see the street piano again and to play more music as soon as she left her small apartment. She felt a lightness in her step that she had not felt in a long time, and the thought of the old piano waiting for her somewhere near the bookstore filled her with a sense of purpose and anticipation. It was almost like joy mixed with a little nervousness, and she wondered if anyone would still stop and listen today, or if she would be alone again. She walked quickly through the familiar streets, noticing small details she had ignored before, like the bright color of flowers in a shop window or the scent of bread from a small bakery. But her mind was mostly on the piano and the music she wanted to play, and as she approached the corner near the old bookstore, she saw it immediately, standing there in the same spot as yesterday, dusty and chipped, but somehow alive in her memory and waiting for her. People walked by as before, but she noticed that some of them gave a small smile as they passed, as if they too remembered yesterday and felt the quiet magic in the air. She felt her fingers tingle in anticipation, and she almost ran toward the piano, her coat flapping slightly behind her and the cool morning air filling her lungs with a sense of freshness she had not felt in weeks. She sat on the wobbly wooden bench and reached out to touch the keys. Her fingers lightly brushed the dust, just like yesterday, but today it felt different because she had more confidence and more courage, and she could feel her heart opening with every note she played. She started with a simple tune, something soft and slow, letting the piano speak first and guiding her fingers and her thoughts into a gentle rhythm that felt like a conversation with an old friend she had not seen in years. The sound was not perfect, but it was real and warm, and she felt tears prick her eyes because she realized how much she had missed this feeling and how much she had forgotten about the small joys that made her life bright and full. A few people stopped to watch her play, just as yesterday. But this time she noticed more faces, some young, some old, and all showing curiosity and quiet admiration. A child stood near the edge of the crowd, clutching his mother's hand, and his eyes were wide as if he had stumbled upon a secret treasure. An elderly man leaned on his cane and nodded slightly as if the music reminded him of something long ago. And a teenager with earphones around his neck stopped walking and smiled quietly, drawn to the sound in a way he did not understand but could not ignore. The small crowd grew slowly as she continued to play, and each note seemed to make the world around her softer and more alive. The busy street fading into a calm background as if the music created its own space in the middle of the city. Her fingers moved more freely now, flowing from one note to another, playing tunes that came naturally. Some she remembered from her childhood, and some she created as she went along, letting her emotions guide her hands. She felt like she was speaking through the piano, telling stories without words, and the crowd seemed to listen as if every note was a small message to them too. A woman near the front had tears in her eyes and whispered something to her friend, and she realized that music had the power to connect people even without knowing each other and without needing any explanation. This realization filled her with warmth and courage, and she played with more confidence, allowing herself to be fully present in the moment. A man at the back of the small crowd raised his phone and began recording her as she played, capturing the quiet miracle of the moment. The way the abandoned piano had come alive again through her hands and the way the street seemed to hold its breath while she performed. She did not notice him at first, lost in her music, but when she saw the small red recording light, she felt a little shy and smiled softly, continuing to play as if the camera were another listener, not something that mattered too much, but still a part of the experience. She realized that her music could reach beyond the street, beyond the people standing there, and the thought gave her a strange sense of hope and possibility, something she had not felt in a long time. The tunes grew richer and deeper as she played, her fingers dancing across the keys with more confidence than ever before. And she felt like the piano and she were in perfect harmony, each key responding to her emotions, each note carrying a part of her story into the open air. She remembered the time when she had stopped playing, the fears and struggles that had made her give up on her dreams. And now, here she was, facing a forgotten piano in the middle of the street, and it felt like life was giving her a second chance, small and quiet, but very real. The thought made her smile, and she played a particularly sweet melody that she had learned as a child, letting the memory and the music flow together in a way that felt like healing. Some people in the crowd began to clap quietly at first, and then more loudly as they realized how beautiful and real the music was, how it transformed the busy street into something magical and calm. A street vendor who was passing by stopped and offered her a bottle of water with a small smile, and she accepted it gratefully, taking a sip while her hands rested on the keys. She felt supported, and the kindness of strangers made her heart swell with gratitude. She noticed that a few people had returned from yesterday, recognizing her from the previous day's music, and they nodded or smiled in encouragement, and she felt a soft connection with them. A quiet bond built from the simple experience of sharing music. As she played, she began to speak softly to the people around her, telling them little stories between tunes about how she had once dreamed of being a pianist and how life had forced her to stop for a while. And they listened with gentle attention, their eyes kind and warm, not judging, only appreciating the honesty in her voice and the truth in her music. She felt free for the first time in many years, able to share her heart openly without fear or shame, and the street seemed to embrace her. The old piano no longer forgotten, but a center of small happiness and community. She took a short pause to catch her breath and noticed the child from earlier pointing at the piano with excitement. And she smiled and invited him closer, letting him touch the keys lightly as she guided his tiny fingers. The child giggled as a small note sounded, and the crowd laughed softly, feeling the joy spread around them. And she felt her heart lighten even more because she realized that music had the power to create small moments of happiness that could last forever in memory. A few teenagers joined in, tapping lightly on the piano to add their own small sounds, and she laughed gently, letting the collaboration continue, seeing how simple human connection could grow from the music alone. She played until her fingers ached, slightly, but the ache was sweet because it reminded her that she had returned to something she loved and had almost forgotten. And every note seemed to leave a mark, not just in the air, but inside her heart as well. The street around her seemed quieter than usual, as if the city itself had paused to listen, and she felt a deep sense of belonging that she had not felt in years. When she finally stopped, the applause came slowly at first, and then filled the small area with warmth and appreciation. And she bowed slightly, feeling shy but happy. And a few people came closer to thank her personally, telling her how much the music had meant to them in ways that words could barely express. She realized that something as simple as a street piano could change the day for so many people, including herself, and the thought made her smile softly. She noticed that the man who had recorded her video seemed hesitant to approach, but finally came forward and told her he had captured the moment to share with others, explaining that the world needed to see the beauty of what she had created. And she felt nervous and excited at the same time, unsure of how sharing it beyond the street might affect her life. She thanked him politely, feeling a mix of pride and humility, and decided that if the video helped others feel happiness, then it was worth it. The rest of the morning passed quickly as she stayed with the piano, playing different tunes and letting her fingers explore new sounds, discovering melodies that came naturally and felt genuine and alive. People kept stopping, some familiar from yesterday and some new, and the little crowd grew quietly but meaningfully, all drawn by the soft and real sound that came from an abandoned instrument that no one had thought could ever matter. She felt that she had created something beautiful without even trying, something that could touch hearts in a way that words could not. And she understood why music had always been important to her, why she had kept its memory, even when life had forced her to set it aside. By the time she finally stood up to leave, her fingers tired but happy, she felt a deep satisfaction that filled her completely, a sense of accomplishment and hope that she had not experienced in years. And she knew she would return again tomorrow, eager to play more, to discover more, and to connect with the small but significant world that had gathered around the piano. She walked away slowly, turning back once to look at it, the sun glinting off its old surface. And she whispered a soft promise to herself that she would nurture this small miracle, that she would not let it fade again, and that she would continue to let music be her voice and her joy. Even as she walked home, the sounds of the street seemed softer, the air lighter, and her heart more open, filled with a strange but beautiful energy that reminded her that life could still surprise her, that moments of joy could appear in the most unexpected places, and that small actions, like touching an abandoned piano, could ripple into something larger and more meaningful than she could have imagined. She smiled quietly to herself, feeling that this was the start of something new, a journey that would unfold in time, with music guiding her and connecting her to the world around her, one note at a time. The next morning, she woke with a feeling of excitement that filled her chest and made her heart beat faster because she knew the piano was waiting for her again. She got ready quickly, dressed in comfortable clothes, and left her small apartment, feeling lighter than she had in months. The city seemed quieter and softer this morning, or maybe it was her own perspective that had changed. As she walked down the familiar streets, the sunlight made the pavement glow, and she noticed small things she usually ignored, like the faint scent of flowers from the florist and the birds singing in the trees. But mostly her mind was on the old piano waiting for her at the corner near the bookstore. When she arrived, the piano stood in the same place, its chipped paint and dusty surface looking even more beautiful to her now, because it was alive with possibility. She sat on the wobbly bench and took a deep breath, placing her fingers gently on the keys. This time she did not hesitate. She let her fingers explore the piano naturally, finding melodies that had been hidden in her memory, and even creating new ones as she went. The sound that emerged was soft and warm at first, and then it grew into something richer, more confident, because she was not just playing notes, but expressing her feelings, the things she had kept inside for so long. The melody seemed to speak directly to the hearts of anyone who passed by. As she played, people began to stop. Some were familiar faces from the previous day, and some were new, drawn in by the music that filled the street. A man in a suit paused, his briefcase in hand, and a woman carrying groceries stopped to listen, her head tilted slightly, as if the music carried a question she wanted to answer. A group of children stood nearby, whispering excitedly to each other, and she smiled softly, knowing the piano had become a bridge between strangers and herself. Each note she played seemed to draw people closer, like a magnet, and the crowd started to grow quietly, all respecting the soft power of the music. She played a tune that reminded her of her childhood, the same one her mother taught her, and as she played, memories flooded back, the small room where she practiced, the sound of her own laughter, and the joy she felt when learning something new. She closed her eyes and let herself feel everything, the pain, the joy, and the longing, and the piano seemed to understand her, giving voice to her emotions in a way that words never could. The people listening seemed to sense it too. Their expressions softened, and some even had tears in their eyes, moved by the honesty and depth of her music. A teenager from the crowd hesitated and then stepped closer to tap the keys. creating a small, playful sound that made her laugh softly. The child she had met yesterday stood beside him, pressing a key lightly and grinning as it made a high, clear note. She guided their small hands gently, letting them explore the piano and join in with their own tiny melodies. The crowd responded with smiles and quiet laughter, and she realized that this small corner of the street had transformed into a little world of connection and joy, a place where music could heal, unite, and inspire without needing words. Her own confidence grew as she continued to play. The music became stronger, more expressive, carrying feelings of hope, longing, and happiness all at once. People were no longer just listeners. They were participants in the energy of the moment, feeling the music in their bodies and hearts. She noticed a man recording her again, this time from a closer distance, and she did not feel shy, but rather proud, knowing that her music could reach beyond the street and touch people she would never meet. The thought filled her with a quiet sense of responsibility and excitement, that something as simple as playing an abandoned piano could ripple outward and have meaning far beyond what she could see. She played for hours, losing track of time as the city moved around her. Some passers-by dropped coins into a small tin placed at the side of the piano, and she refused to accept them at first, not wanting to mix charity with her joy of playing. But a woman insisted gently and smiled, saying it was a gift to honor the music, and she felt a warmth in her chest as she accepted it. Each note she played seemed to echo the feelings she had kept hidden for so long, the pain of giving up her dreams, the struggles she faced, and the small joys that she had almost forgotten. The piano had become a place of release, a way to speak without words, and she felt lighter and freer with each passing minute. A local music teacher approached quietly and watched her play, nodding appreciatively. After she finished a melody, he spoke to her softly, praising her natural talent and encouraging her to consider sharing her gift with more people. His words were gentle but confident, and she felt a surge of validation she had not expected. She realized that for years she had doubted herself, thinking her music was nothing special, and now, here in the street, surrounded by strangers who listened with respect and admiration, she felt seen and understood in a way that moved her deeply. The crowd continued to grow, drawn by the music and the energy that radiated from her and the piano. People who had been busy and hurried stopped, captivated by the scene. Some brought small gifts like flowers or a warm drink, a gesture of gratitude and encouragement, and she accepted them with a soft smile, her heart swelling with the kindness and humanity surrounding her. The old piano, once abandoned and forgotten, had become a center of life and hope, and she marveled at how something so simple could hold so much power. She started to play more complex tunes, combining her memories with new inspirations that came from the moment. Her fingers moved with grace and confidence, and each note carried a story, an emotion, a piece of herself. The crowd responded not with noise, but with silent attention, letting the music wash over them and fill the space with something magical. She felt a deep connection with every person watching, a quiet bond created through shared experience and the beauty of sound. She had never felt such a sense of purpose before, and it filled her with both joy and humility. As the afternoon passed, she noticed people recording her on their phones, whispering about how incredible it was that an abandoned piano could come alive through someone's hands. She wondered where the videos would go, who would see them, and if anyone far away would feel the same sense of wonder she had created in that small street. A small thrill ran through her as she realized that her music could travel, could inspire, could bring happiness even beyond this small corner. And she embraced the thought with excitement and a quiet determination. The child and the teenager returned, still eager to play, and she let them explore the piano again, guiding their hands with care and teaching them small things about rhythm and melody. The crowd smiled and encouraged them, and she watched with delight as music became a shared experience that transcended age and background. She laughed softly, feeling a lightness she had not felt in years, realizing that the piano was more than an instrument. It was a bridge, a teacher, a friend that brought people together and reminded them of simple joys. She played until her fingers ached, but the ache was sweet, a reminder of her own strength and persistence. She took a moment to rest, letting her hands hover over the keys as she looked around at the crowd, feeling a wave of gratitude and connection that was almost overwhelming. People smiled, whispered, and nodded, sharing unspoken messages of encouragement and appreciation, and she felt a quiet pride in having created something that could touch hearts in such a meaningful way. She realized that she had found more than music. She had found a way to connect, to heal, and to rediscover herself. The music teacher returned once more, this time suggesting that she might consider performing somewhere bigger, sharing her gift beyond the street, and she listened carefully, feeling a mixture of fear and hope. The idea of leaving the comfort of the street piano and playing in a different space was daunting, but she could not ignore the possibility that her music could reach more people, could create more moments of joy and connection, and she felt a quiet determination growing inside her. The piano had given her courage, and she realized that courage could lead to new paths. Even if they were uncertain, the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the street and softening the colors of the city. She played one final melody for the day, letting it be slow and gentle, a goodbye to the crowd and a thank you to the piano. The notes lingered in the air, and the crowd responded with warm applause and smiles, some waving, some whispering thanks, all touched by the music they had experienced. She stood up slowly, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment and peace, knowing that she had given herself and others a gift that could not be measured in money or fame, but in feeling and connection. As she walked home, she replayed the day in her mind, remembering the smiles, the laughter, the quiet tears, and the energy of the music. She felt her heart lighter and her mind calmer, carrying a soft but powerful sense of accomplishment and hope. She realized that this was only the beginning, that the street piano and the music it created could change her life in ways she could not yet imagine. And she embraced the thought with quiet joy and anticipation for the days to come. Her steps were light, her spirit lifted, and she knew that music had returned to her life, bringing with it a sense of purpose, connection, and the possibility of something beautiful growing in the world around her. The next morning, she woke early with the feeling of excitement she had grown used to over the last few days. The memory of yesterday's music and the crowd's gentle smiles filled her with warmth and anticipation. She hurried through her morning routine, her mind already imagining the touch of the piano keys under her fingers, and the way the notes would rise into the air, mingling with the soft sounds of the street. As she left her small apartment, the city felt more alive and welcoming than before, and the sun seemed to shine a little brighter, casting long golden streaks on the pavement and buildings. Each step she took brought her closer to the corner near the old bookstore, and she could almost feel the piano waiting for her, a quiet friend ready to speak through her fingers once more. When she arrived, she saw that the piano was still there, its old surface weathered and worn, but somehow stronger and more meaningful than ever. She approached it slowly, noticing how the sunlight hit the chipped wood, making it glow in a soft, gentle way. She sat on the wobbly bench, her heart beating quickly with excitement, and placed her hands on the keys. The music began to flow almost immediately, gentle at first, and then growing in confidence as her fingers found their way across the piano. She let her emotions guide her, remembering the joy of playing as a child and the sadness of the years she had left it behind. And each note seemed to carry a small part of her story into the world. People began to gather quickly, drawn by the sound that floated across the street. Some were familiar from previous days, returning to witness the music again, and some were new, their curiosity piqued by the strange sight of a woman playing a piano in the middle of the street. A few children ran up, their small hands pressing the keys tentatively as she guided them with gentle instruction. Their laughter mixed with the music, creating a harmony that felt warm and bright. Adults watched quietly, some nodding their heads to the rhythm, some whispering to each other about the beauty of what they were hearing. She realized that the piano had become more than an instrument. It had become a center of attention and connection, a place where people of all ages could come together without speaking. United by the power of music, her fingers moved more freely now, dancing across the keys with a confidence she had never had before. She played old melodies she remembered from her childhood, and as she did, she began to improvise, creating new tunes inspired by the moment. Each note seemed to tell a story, not just of her own life, but of the people around her, and she felt a deep connection with everyone who stopped to listen. Some people had tears in their eyes, others smiled quietly, and a few even began to sway gently with the music. The energy in the street shifted, becoming calm and soft, yet full of life, and she felt proud and humbled by the effect her music had on the world around her. A man in the crowd held up his phone and began recording, and she noticed it, but did not feel shy. Instead, she smiled softly, realizing that her music could now travel beyond the street, reaching people she would never meet. The thought made her heart race with excitement and a little nervousness, but it also filled her with hope. Perhaps her music could touch even more hearts than she could imagine. She continued to play, letting herself become fully absorbed in the melodies, the notes rising and falling, carrying feelings of joy, sorrow, hope, and love into the street. People started to interact more with the piano, adding small harmonies, tapping lightly on the side or clapping in rhythm. She guided them gently, letting everyone feel part of the music. The children pressed the keys under her hand, learning how to make simple tunes, and their laughter and excitement added a new layer to the music. Adults whispered encouragements to each other and to her, telling her how much the music meant to them, and she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. It was as if the piano had become a vessel for something larger than herself, something that could touch hearts, lift spirits, and create small moments of happiness in the middle of a busy city. She paused for a moment, letting the last note linger in the air, and the crowd responded with warm applause. A woman in the front gave her a small bouquet of flowers, and she accepted it with a soft smile, touched by the gesture. A street vendor offered her a bottle of water, and she thanked him, realizing that she was beginning to feel part of the small community that had formed around the piano. The music had become a bridge, connecting strangers in a way that words could not, and she felt grateful for the opportunity to share this experience with them as the day went on. More people came to listen, and the crowd grew larger. Some recorded videos on their phones, whispering to each other about how amazing it was that such music could come from an abandoned piano. She noticed a few familiar faces from previous days, and they nodded in recognition and encouragement. She felt a deep sense of pride and purpose, knowing that her music was bringing joy and wonder to people she would never see again. The piano had transformed from a forgotten object into a source of inspiration and connection, and she felt a quiet sense of accomplishment and happiness. A local music teacher approached her quietly, watching her play with admiration. After she finished a tune, he spoke softly, praising her talent and encouraging her to consider sharing her gift in a more formal setting. She listened carefully, feeling a mixture of fear and hope. Performing for a larger audience was daunting, but the thought of reaching more people with her music filled her with excitement. She realized that the street piano had given her courage and confidence, and perhaps it was time to explore what she could do beyond the small corner of the city. The children and teenagers returned to play, and she guided them gently, letting them add small notes and rhythms to the music. The crowd smiled and encouraged them, and she watched with delight as music became a shared experience, a way to connect people of different ages and backgrounds. She laughed softly, feeling a sense of joy and lightness she had not experienced in years. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a teacher, a friend, and a source of happiness for everyone who came near it. As the afternoon turned into evening, she played one last melody for the day, slow and gentle. A farewell to the crowd and a thank you to the piano. The notes lingered in the air, and the crowd responded with applause and smiles. People whispered thanks, waved, and nodded, all touched by the music and the moment they had shared. She stood up slowly, feeling tired but fulfilled, her fingers aching slightly from the hours of playing, but the ache was sweet and satisfying. She knew that she had given herself and others a gift that could not be measured in money or fame, but in feelings, connection, and joy. As she walked home, she reflected on the day, replaying the music, the smiles, and the laughter in her mind. Her heart felt light, her mind calm, and she carried with her a sense of accomplishment and hope. She realized that this was just the beginning, that the piano and the music it created could continue to change her life in ways she could not yet imagine. She felt a quiet determination to return the next day, eager to play more, to explore new melodies, and to continue connecting with the small but meaningful community that had gathered around the piano. Each note she played seemed to bring her closer to herself and to the world around her. And she knew that the magic of the piano would remain with her, guiding her and inspiring her in the days to come. She reached her apartment, feeling a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. The experience had changed her, reminding her of the joy and power of music and the importance of sharing it with others. She knew that the piano had given her something precious, a way to express herself, to heal, and to connect with the world, and she felt grateful for every moment. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about the day and the people who had listened, laughed, and smiled with her. And she realized that music had the power to transform not only her life, but the lives of everyone around her. She closed her eyes with a soft smile, ready to face the next day with hope, courage, and the knowledge that the abandoned piano had opened a door to something beautiful and new. The next morning she woke early with the sunlight streaming through her window and a feeling of excitement that made her heart beat faster than it had in years, because she knew the piano was waiting for her again, and she wanted to play more and share more music with the world around her. She dressed quickly, putting on comfortable clothes, and left her small apartment, her steps light and her mind focused on the corner near the old bookstore where the piano stood. The streets seemed calmer than usual, the morning breeze carrying the scents of fresh bread and flowers from the small shops she passed. But her attention remained on the piano and the music that awaited her. She felt a deep sense of purpose, a quiet joy that had been missing from her life for so long, and she could not wait to touch the keys again. When she arrived at the corner, the piano stood there in the same place, its surface scratched and worn, but still beautiful in a strange, quiet way. She ran her hand over the top of it, feeling the rough texture of the wood, and then sat on the wobbly bench, her fingers hovering over the keys. She began to play slowly, letting the music flow gently at first, each note carrying a sense of her emotions, hope, longing, and a little nervous excitement. The sound of the piano seemed to fill the street, drawing people in naturally, like a quiet invitation to stop and listen. She could feel herself relaxing, losing the tension of the week, and letting the music become a part of her once again. People began to gather quickly, drawn by the sound. Some were familiar faces from previous days, returning to hear her play, and some were new, curious about the woman playing a piano in the middle of the street. Children ran up, their eyes wide with excitement, and she let them press the keys lightly, guiding their hands with patience and a gentle smile. Their laughter blended with the music, creating a warmth in the air that made her heart swell. Adults watched quietly, nodding their heads to the rhythm, whispering to each other, and smiling, caught by the beauty of what they were hearing. The street transformed into a soft, alive space, where the world seemed calmer, softer, and more connected. Her confidence grew as she continued to play. She remembered the melodies she had learned as a child and began to mix them with tunes she improvised on the spot. Each note told a story, not only about her own life, but about the emotions and experiences of the people around her. She noticed some people wiping tears quietly from their eyes, others smiling and closing their eyes to feel the music fully, and a few even swayed gently with the rhythm. The energy of the crowd seemed to match the music, and she felt a deep connection with everyone present. A quiet bond built from shared experience and the power of sound. A man in the crowd raised his phone and started recording, and she smiled softly, realizing that her music could now travel beyond the street. It could reach people who had never heard her play, who might feel the same sense of calm and wonder she had inspired here. She felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness, but mostly she felt hope. Perhaps her music could touch even more hearts than she could imagine. She continued to play, letting herself be fully absorbed, each note rising and falling like the waves of her emotions. And she realized that this abandoned piano had become a bridge between herself and the world. The crowd grew larger, drawn by the sound of music and the atmosphere of connection. Some people added small harmonies, tapping lightly on the side of the piano or clapping softly in rhythm. She guided them gently, letting everyone participate without overwhelming the music. Children pressed the keys under her instruction, learning simple notes and rhythms, their laughter and excitement blending with her melodies. Adults whispered to one another, commenting on the beauty and emotion of the performance. And she felt proud and fulfilled, realizing that the piano was no longer just an instrument, but a source of joy, teaching, and connection. She paused for a moment to let the last note linger, and the crowd responded with gentle applause and warm smiles. A woman handed her a small bouquet of flowers, and she accepted it with gratitude, feeling touched by the gesture. A street vendor offered her a bottle of water, and she thanked him, feeling a sense of belonging with this small community that had formed around the piano. The music had created something greater than herself, a shared experience that lifted everyone who had come to listen. And she felt a quiet sense of happiness and accomplishment. As the morning turned into afternoon, more people came to see her play. The crowd included familiar faces from the previous days and new visitors, all drawn to the soft, real music that filled the street. People whispered about how amazing it was that an abandoned piano could come alive through her fingers. She noticed some recording videos, capturing the moment to share with others. She realized her music could reach beyond this street, spreading hope and joy further than she had ever imagined. The thought inspired her, giving her courage and a sense of responsibility to continue playing and sharing her gift. A local music teacher approached her quietly, watching her play with admiration. When she finished a melody, he spoke softly, praising her talent and suggesting she consider performing in a more formal setting. She listened carefully, feeling both fear and hope. Performing beyond the street was daunting, but the idea that her music could touch more people filled her with excitement. The piano had given her confidence, and she realized she could use that courage to explore new possibilities for herself. She felt a quiet determination to see where her music could take her. The children and teenagers returned, eager to play, and she guided them with patience, letting them explore and create their own melodies. The crowd encouraged them, smiling and clapping quietly, and she felt a deep joy seeing the music bring people together. She laughed softly, realizing that the piano had become more than an object. It was alive in the hearts of everyone who interacted with it. The laughter, joy, and soft music mingled together, creating a sense of connection that went beyond words. A shared human experience she had longed for without realizing it. As the afternoon moved toward evening, she played one final melody for the day. It was slow and gentle, a farewell to the crowd and a thank you to the piano. The notes lingered, and the crowd responded with warm applause and kind smiles. People whispered thanks, waved, and nodded, touched by the music and the moment. She stood up slowly, feeling tired but deeply satisfied. Her fingers ached slightly, but the ache was sweet, a reminder of the time spent sharing something beautiful. She had given herself and others a gift that could not be measured in wealth or fame, only in feelings and connection. Walking home, she reflected on the day, replaying the music and the interactions in her mind. Her heart felt light, her mind calm, and she carried a sense of accomplishment and hope. She realized this was just the beginning. The piano had opened a door to a world of possibility, one that could continue to change her life and the lives of those who heard her play. She felt determined to return the next day, eager to create more melodies and continue sharing the gift of music. Every note she played brought her closer to herself and the people around her, and she knew the piano would guide her journey. Arriving home, she felt peaceful and fulfilled. The experience had reminded her of the joy and power of music and its ability to connect people. She understood that the piano had given her more than an opportunity to play. It had given her courage, hope, and a renewed sense of purpose. Lying in bed that night, she thought of the faces, the smiles, and the shared moments of the day, knowing that her music had touched lives in ways she had never expected. She closed her eyes with a soft smile, ready to embrace the next day with hope, courage, and gratitude. And she knew that the abandoned piano had become a key to something beautiful and new in her life. The morning sun streamed through her window, filling the room with a soft, warm light, and she woke with a feeling of excitement and anticipation that made her heart race. Today felt different, as if something special was waiting for her, and she could not wait to see the old piano on the street corner once again. She dressed quickly and left her apartment, moving through the familiar streets with a lightness in her steps she had not felt in years. The world seemed brighter, filled with small details she usually ignored, the sound of birds in the trees, the scent of fresh bread from the bakery, and the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. But her mind was focused on the piano, the music it would bring, and the people who might gather to listen. When she reached the corner near the old bookstore, she saw the piano waiting patiently, its surface worn and chipped, yet somehow stronger and more beautiful in her eyes than ever before. She approached it slowly, placing her hands on the keys and feeling the familiar roughness of the wood. The first notes she played were soft and tentative, like a gentle greeting to an old friend. Then the music grew richer, flowing naturally from her fingers as she let her emotions guide her. Each note carried a story, a memory, a feeling. And as the melody rose and fell, she felt herself becoming fully alive in the present moment. Free from the worries and fatigue that had burdened her for so long, people began to gather almost immediately, some familiar from the previous days and some new, drawn to the music that floated through the street like a warm invitation. Children ran up, their eyes wide with curiosity, and she guided their small hands over the keys, letting them create their own simple tunes. Their laughter blended with the music, adding a playful rhythm that lifted the spirits of everyone present. Adults stopped to watch quietly, nodding in time to the melody, whispering to each other, and smiling at the beauty of the performance. She realized that this corner of the city had become a sanctuary, a place where people of all ages could pause, connect, and share in something magical. Her confidence grew with each passing moment. She remembered the melodies from her childhood, blending them with tunes she invented on the spot, improvising freely and letting the piano speak her emotions. The crowd responded to her music, some swaying gently, some closing their eyes to fully absorb the notes, and others nodding in quiet appreciation. She felt a profound connection to them, as if the music had created an invisible bond, bringing everyone together without the need for words. This connection gave her a deep sense of fulfillment and purpose she had never experienced before. A man in the crowd began recording her with his phone, capturing the magic of the moment. She noticed him, but did not feel shy. Instead, she smiled softly, realizing that her music could reach far beyond the street. It could touch people who had never heard her play, who might feel the same joy and wonder that she had created here. The thought filled her with excitement and hope. Perhaps her music could inspire others, bring calm to a chaotic world, or remind someone of something they had lost. The possibilities made her heart soar, and she played with more passion, letting her emotions flow freely through the piano. The crowd continued to grow, drawn by the music and the energy in the air. Some added small harmonies, tapping gently on the side of the piano or clapping softly in rhythm. She guided them gently, letting everyone participate in the music without overwhelming the melody. Children pressed keys under her instruction, creating a joyful mix of sound and laughter. Adults whispered quietly, commenting on the beauty of the performance, and she felt proud and satisfied, realizing that the piano had become more than an instrument. It was a bridge, a teacher, and a source of joy for everyone who engaged with it. She paused for a moment, letting the last note linger in the air, and the crowd responded with warm applause. A woman handed her a small bouquet of flowers, which she accepted with gratitude, feeling the gesture as a sign of appreciation and connection. A street vendor offered her a bottle of water, which she accepted with a soft smile. She realized that she had become part of this small community, and the piano had created something far greater than music alone. It had created human connection, shared joy, and a sense of belonging. As the morning turned into afternoon, more people gathered. The crowd now included familiar faces from previous days, smiling and nodding, as well as new visitors curious about the music. Some recorded videos, whispering excitedly about the beauty of an abandoned piano brought to life by a woman who played from her heart. She understood that her music could travel far beyond this street, touching lives she might never know. The thought filled her with pride and excitement, giving her courage to continue sharing her gift. A local music teacher approached her again, observing her play with admiration. After she finished a melody, he spoke softly, praising her talent and suggesting that she consider performing in a more formal setting. She listened carefully, feeling a mix of fear and hope. Performing for a larger audience was daunting, but the idea of sharing her music with more people filled her with excitement. The piano had given her courage and confidence, and now she realized that this courage could help her explore new opportunities, reach more people, and create more moments of joy. The children returned once more, eager to explore the keys under her guidance. She let them play, teaching them simple tunes, and the crowd responded with warm smiles and soft laughter. She watched with delight as the music became a shared experience, connecting people of all ages. The piano was no longer just an object. It was alive in the hearts of everyone who interacted with it. The shared laughter, the joy, and the soft melodies created a sense of community, a reminder of the simple, human connections that could bring happiness to even the busiest streets. As the afternoon faded into evening, she played one final melody, slow and gentle, as a farewell to the crowd and a thank you to the piano. The notes lingered in the air, and the crowd responded with applause and smiles, waving and whispering their thanks. She stood slowly, feeling both tired and deeply fulfilled. Her fingers ached slightly, a sweet ache from hours of playing, but the sensation was satisfying, a reminder of the gift she had shared. She had created something meaningful, not measured in wealth or recognition, but in feeling and human connection. Walking home, she reflected on the day, replaying the music, the laughter, and the smiles in her mind. Her heart felt light, and her spirit was calm. She carried a deep sense of accomplishment and hope. She knew this was just the beginning. The piano had opened a door to a new world of possibilities, a path that could continue to change her life and the lives of those who heard her play. She felt determined to return, eager to create new melodies, inspire others, and explore the full potential of her gift. Every note she played brought her closer to herself and to the people around her, strengthening the bond created by music. Arriving home, she felt peaceful and content. The experience had reminded her of the beauty and power of music and its ability to bring people together. The piano had given her more than a chance to play. It had given her confidence, hope, and a renewed sense of purpose. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about the faces in the crowd, the shared moments, and the joy of connecting through music. She closed her eyes with a soft smile, ready to face the next day with hope, courage, and gratitude. The abandoned piano had become a key to something beautiful and new in her life, opening a door to endless possibilities. And she knew that its music would continue to inspire and guide her journey for a long time to come.